You talk about people being invited to the barbecue. You ain't barbecued in a while. Have a barbecue. Invite the neighborhood. Get to know the people who you see every day and don't have no idea who they are. And I promise you that as we grow community and we do that and we teach our children to grow community and to cope healthily and to lean on our faith in times of trouble and to hold on to the hope that these are the things that will transform the next generation.
Hey, family, welcome to another episode of the Black Man's Roundtable. I am your host, Rodney Butler, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental Health Awareness Month, you guys know that here on the Black Man's Roundtable, we talk a lot about mental health, especially in our community. And on this episode, we are bringing back one of our, well, we call him a contributor now, because this gentleman definitely brings an understanding to to what we in the Black community, what we kind of love to weave, spiritual wellness and mental wellness together. And there's no other contributor that I have that does that better than Dr. Bryant. And so what we're going to do that tonight. We're going to weave that thing in there. And let me do introduction before I bring him on. Dr. Christopher Bryant holds an earned doctorate, holds earned doctorates in philosophy and ministry, and is a board certified mental health coach, as well as a certified mental health advocate and a certified pastoral counselor. With that being said, Dr. Bryant, how you doing today, brother?
Very well.
Excuse me. Great. Like I said, it's always great having you on, man, because like I said, we do have mental wellness, mental health professionals on quite often because like I said, and of course, we do the series, the mental health series, but we definitely like when we can weave mental health and spiritual health together and hopefully bring us some spiritual wealth as well. But with that, we have a few topics that we're going to jump into, and I'm going to get right into them, Dr. Bryant, because they are like 6 or 7 of them, and I really want to squeeze them in an hour. So with that, I want to actually start out talking to you about the mental wellness first. We're going to hit mental wellness, we're going to hit spiritual wellness, and then I want to talk about integrating those two at the end, a couple of topics that integrates those two at the end. So starting with mental wellness, I want to start out talking about breaking the silence. Mental health stigma in the Black community. Why don't we talk about it? How can we change that?
Why don't we talk about it? Culturally, ancestrally, right?
Mm-hmm.
As Black people in America, most of us came over via the transatlantic slave trade. We have roots in West Africa. We know our story. One of the things that survival in those days necessitated was silence, right? And so we learned that what happens in our house stays in our house. Most of the time, that was because we was plotting on how to escape, plotting on how to organize religion, even though Master said we couldn't, plotting. But over time, that meant that our vices became part of that as well. And so now I can't be seen as weak. Mental health is a weakness. Mental health means I'm crazy, like the people in the movies. Mental health means that there is something inherently wrong with me, and I'm telling you, I'm just fine. So it can't be that. Or even with the spirituality piece, my pastor told me as long as I prayed about it, then I was all right. As long as I fasted and prayed, and I tell people all the time, I'm wearing this collar. These certificates is real. I am certified as a pastor. I am a consecrated archbishop in the Lord's church. I'm here to tell you that that's not the case. Even the Bible talks about community wellness, right? But we talk about it in terms of sin, as in sin is the only thing that we have to talk to each other about. And that's not the case. So we get scriptures like James 5:16. Confess your faults one to another. Don't say sins. At least not in King James. It say faults. Well, that means beyond my sins, there are parts of me that are broken and that I need to have conversations about so that I can receive healing. And so we have to get past this idea that isolation is necessary for healing, especially because if you could heal yourself, you would already, right? I can fix it. I'll fix it. What I'm doing is putting my head down and living with it. I am tolerating something that ought to be excommunicated, ought to be pushed away from me. And by that, it just messes up the whole thing. So that's why we don't talk about it. Now, how can we change that? We've got to do what we're doing right now and show people that it is okay without negative consequence to have an open and honest conversation about what's going on in their interior life. Period. Right now, only 1 in 3 black adults with mental illness receives treatment. That means 2/3 of black adults with mental health problems stay away from doctors, stay away from therapists, stay away from coaches, stay away from medicine. Things that would infinitely make their life better, that would really hold on to them, but they don't do it because, again, that stigma. So when we show people, hey, yo, no, I'm great, and I take medicine. Yeah, I do all of these things, and I'm an archbishop. Yeah, I go to therapy. Maybe you need to see that your favorite rapper or favorite actor do it. But however we do, when we see collectively that our taking care of our mental health adds to our strength and not makes us weak, I think that'll be the shift.
Absolutely. I talked about it, I think the last time you were on. And I definitely talk about it, on the other platforms on the Black Man's Roundtable. And that is, I do believe that is slowly but surely becoming, not so taboo in our community, to talk about mental health and mental wellness. And we've never really had a problem talking about the spiritual side of it, which we would get into, but the mental we have. And so, and I'm just wondering, have you seen some of that same observation, with it not becoming so taboo, even though we still have a long way to go?
Absolutely. Nowadays, you'll see commercials, especially around, you know, things like Mental Health Month, where people will be like, "Hi, my name is so and so, and I have insert disorder here or insert mental health problem here," right? And you'll see a plethora of that because I think more people understand that awareness is power, right? And so awareness is the first step. It's not certainly not the last step. It doesn't cure everything because knowing something and not doing it puts you in the same position. And I think even then we have, a long way to go. But just being able to have conversations like this. 10 years ago, this wouldn't be a thing.
No, sir.
People with larger platforms having the same conversation. I just got done listening to Pastor Jamal Harrison Bryant have a conversation about mental health and that type of stigma. He was one of the few people that I understand that preaches about it regularly as it relates to men and not just, women or people who are survivors of some type of trauma. And so being able to break those cycles, I think really, really, really puts us in positions and places that ultimately bring things out into the light. And once it's exposed to the light, then it can be dealt with and then we can move forward as a people.
Absolutely. And I am proud to say that our mental health series here on the Black Man's Roundtable podcast is one of the most viewed episodes that we do. So I'm proud to say that. Sticking with on the mental wellness topic, emotional strength versus emotional suppression. Dr. Bryant, talk about redefining what it means to be strong as a Black man. Now I know this can take 20 minutes, but I want you to shorten it up.
You asked the black preacher to go.
I know this is one of your favorite ones, so yeah.
Oh, no, no, no. Let me explain this like this. The necessity of the idea of a strong black man came out of a place, again, where that it was necessary for survival, right? The ones, those of us who survived the transatlantic slave trade were the strong ones. Those who survived buck breaking were the strong ones. Those of us who were most useful in the field were the strong ones, right? And so strength became a method of survival, or at least the projection of strength. Here we go. And so when we see emotional strength, emotional suppression, and we deal with those two realities, the fact is we were raised the same way because generationally we pass down the ideas, even if the reason for those ideas are no longer present. We pass down these ideas, and the idea is men don't cry. Suck it up, be a man. Now, look how crazy we sound. The boys that we say that to are 8, 9, and 10. You ain't a man yet. You barely got done, eating Similac, drinking Similac. But I'm asking you to be grown in a way that you're not ready for because I am instilling something into you that I perceive as necessary to your survival. And it's all well and good. We make it to adulthood. We've learned to suck this up. We've learned to be a man, stop being a punk. We've learned women don't want men who cry, etc., etc. There's only one day a man can shed a tear, and that's on his wedding day. All types of stuff we hear. But here is the dilemma. How I see myself. I still have this interior life. I'm still depressed. I'm still, have suicidal ideologies. I'm still got anxiety. But I've learned how to mask and hide and cope to the point where I don't think those are issues for me anymore. And now I have suppressed my emotions to the point where I'm no longer living in my full humanity. So, how do I fix that? Because perception is a powerful thing. 63% of African Americans view depression as a personal weakness rather than a health issue. And so my self-perception is, if I'm sad, something's wrong with me. Now, I'm sad. This is a doctor issue. Let me go see a therapist. Let me go see a psychiatrist. Let me go see a mental health person so that I can have this physical issue fixed. And so when we deal with that suppression, we deal with that dichotomy between I understand mental health as a chemical imbalance. I understand it as this is a set of synapses that need to fire differently, and that's why they have medications for it, because if my mind changes because my physiology changes, then there is a physiological problem, not a mental one. And so now I got to move and I've got to do, because watch this. Spiritually, we always say Jesus is the ultimate man, right?
Right.
We say that Jesus is the prototype of man. Everybody want to be like Jesus. What would Jesus do? The Bible says, John 11:35, 2 words, shortest verse in the Bible. Jesus wept. But we still teach people grown men don't cry. Well, either you're going to be a man like Jesus, or you're going to be some caricature of a man that is still trying to survive in a world that is harsh to him. And I get that. I too am, I don't know if you can see me, but I am a black man living in a world that is harsh to me. But if I don't have an outlet for those emotions, if I do not have a healthy way, then they're always going to come out. And then they come out unhealthy ways, and rates of domestic violence go up, and rates of homicide go up, and also, or other sorts of violent crimes, they go up because I've got to let this out somewhere. My biological and physiological and psychological nature says that these things have to be released. Because if not, then they manifest otherwise. I get cancer. I have heart disease. I have, all sorts of health, what we would call physical health issues that originate psychosomatically. And psychosomatic don't mean you crazy. It means that a disordered way of thinking caused a physiological problem. And so how do we fix that? We cannot suppress our emotions. We have to be like Paul. It is when I'm weak that I'm strong. When what I think is weakness, I can accept and I can deal with in a healthy manner, then that is my strength. Just like folks say autism is your superpower, you got to lean into the thing that makes you feel like you're weak, because that is the thing that makes you the strongest.
Absolutely. And when you were talking about, how we tell our boys, and I think you started from, you said like 6, 7, 8 years old. It's even younger than that. And these boys are being also told stuff like, you're the man of the house and all these things. We're putting all these adult responsibilities on boys. And I don't care how your boy is being raised right now. I don't care what the circumstances, but there is no boy who is old enough and ready enough to be the man of anybody's house. So it just reminds me, of how much we put, on, little, especially little black boys, and the tropes and the things that we are, we tell them is kind of, Chris, is kind of equivalent to what I see when we talk about, when I hear the term or the phrase independent black woman, right? That just irks me so bad, because no other woman that I know of in any other culture or any other, that made up construct of race, that we talk about, is you never hear no other woman but an African American woman, walking around saying, I'm an independent woman. I don't think you're supposed to be independent, not in the sense that what they're talking about. We should be partners. There's a reason that God made, the genders and everything. And so I think that to say I'm an independent black woman, I really wish that all black women who are listening to this podcast, and all the brothers who are listening to this podcast, just think about that. Think about that. You don't hear other women saying, I'm a proud, independent, whatever kind of woman they are, Asian woman or whatever.
Why? Watch this. Culturally and spiritually, we are made to live in community. Period.
Yes, sir.
If we go back to we talk about Spanish people. The whole Spanish folks will live in one house. The uncle,
Yes,
the
sir.
auntie, the mama, the daddy, the cousin, the brother, everybody. It's 20 of y'all in one in 2-bedroom house.
We
But
used to be that way.
we used to be that way. Why? Because we understood who we were. We weren't trying to assimilate into a culture that was projected on us and that was not inherently our own. Right? And so now we want to be boys kicked out of 18. You go be a man now. Your brain ain't finished developing until you're 25. What you gonna do? There's this anachronism. So we put you in, hand you a gun at 18 in the army, but you can't drink till you're 21. These anachronisms. And so when we get back to things like bear ye one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. When we go back to, they will know you are Christians, not by how much you pray, not by how much you fast, not by these collars and chains. You will know you're Christians by your love for one another. And even Jesus, we talk about the parable of the lost sheep and how Jesus go get the one. There's still 99 sheep living together in community. And Jesus cares about the one, not because the one is so independently important, but because without the one, the 100 isn't whole. And we have broken communities today because we took the neighbor out of neighborhood, and now we just living in hoods. And now the 100 isn't whole again. The hood isn't neighborly anymore. The community isn't a community anymore. And we need to bring that back.
Absolutely. And before we move into the spiritual wellness, on the 2 or 3 spiritual wellness topics that we have, I want to say that when you talked about how, we tell our kids 18, get out or whatever, right? Not only are we now culturally conditioned, the adults to get the kids out in the world when they're 18, but the kid is culturally conditioned to start to act grown and make it hard to be in a home environment, because they amp up all that sweet 16 and 18 you can do this, and 21 you can buy alcohol, whatever, right? And so it's all just a game. It's all, like you said, we assimilated into these different kinds of cultures. Even Dr. King say we were never, he wanted us to integrate. He never meant, for us to fully assimilate like that. And, and he realized, before he was assassinated that, there were some mistakes that he made. So he definitely owned those. But I just wanted to, because I know some people going to watch this and be like, well, my kid, I had my kid to get out of my house at 18 because they started running off at the mouth. Well, what I want you to know is that, yes, both the adults in the home and the new adults, as they want to be known, or the children, both people are culturally conditioned to get away from each other. So I don't want someone to think that they're right or they're wrong or anything like that. I just wanted to point that out. So, but yeah, you definitely nailed it. Appreciate it, and and I love the way that you ended your your topic on the emotional strength versus the emotional suppression. And it takes us right into our spiritual wellness topics. The first one, I'm wanting to talk about faith healing and mental health. Faith healing and mental health. And Doc, I want you to explore the role of prayer, mediation, and spiritual tradition in wellness.
Okay. I recognize, number one, that not everybody listening is a Christian. So please understand, for those of you who listen, that I am a Christian. I'm a Christian pastor, Pentecostal Christian pastor, and I'm Pentecostal Orthodox for those who want to drill all the way in. So I speak from a particular perspective, but I have a broad enough view to say that there are analogs to what I'm about to say in most faith traditions. But here's what I got to say. We talk about prayer, right? Prayer works. Prayer works for very, very specific reasons. Number one, prayer reorients our minds in such a way that we can accept what is coming for us rather than try to impose our will on what is going on around us. And that's not to say that there are times when we don't need to be dominant or assertive or, that our will is wrong or anything. But that is to say that I recognize that there's someone higher than me. I always tell people that prayer is our access to the command center of the universe. All the buttons, all the screens, all the, something like Mission Impossible, all that is right there. And God is orchestrating everything from the prayer room of heaven. And so what do? How do we access that command center? We pray. The Bible says, in the book of Revelation, that the ancestors, as we would call it historically, as church folk, we call them the saints who have gone on before us. They hear our prayers, receive our prayers, and transport our prayers to God Himself. And so there is a spirituality that connects our past to our present in prayer. There's a spirituality that connects our present to God in prayer. And then there's a spirituality that connects God to us in prayer. And when that loop is closed and we run along that cycle, then we'll see mindsets change, chains broken, because prayer does work. The Bible says it like this: the effectual and fervent prayer of the righteous man avails much. So we have to pray. And every religion has some form of prayer or meditation. And so I often tell people the story of Abraham. Abraham is out in the Ur Chaldees. He's praying to send the moon god and a couple of other gods that are Mesopotamian gods. Yahweh answers. So I'm not here to impose a faith tradition on you. But I'm telling you, the God that answers will hear what whoever you're praying to, the God who answers hears, and will answer in such a way that will ultimately be for your benefit. As far as spiritual traditions and wellness, not only does prayer, meditation, church help us solve the problem directly, but it's also a great coping mechanism while we're going through the struggle. Hope helps. And one of the greatest sources of hope is the gospel story, right? And so we cannot lose hope. One of the greatest things about Barack Obama was not that he was black. We've had black presidential candidates before. They lost. It's not that, Barack Obama sold us a vision of hope that we all bought into because we understood the world that we were in. And likewise, our spiritual traditions, our faith traditions bring us a level of hope. Hope in what? That Psalm says it like this: I would have despaired had I not believed that I would see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. That hope is what sustains me. Abraham hoped against hope, and because of that, it was counted for him as righteousness. There is this narrative that hope sustains people. These died afar off, not having the promise, but they died in hope. And so Jesus goes back in between Friday and Sunday, Good Friday, Easter Sunday. It goes back for the people who hoped in him and heals their wounds and binds up their brokenness and receives them into heaven and does all these things. Why? Because hope is a powerful thing. And we cannot lose the hope, right? And so we got prayer and we've got hope. The last thing I want to say is, you talk about faith healers, right? There is a rampant abuse of the idea of faith healing in such a way that it causes more mental health problems than it does solve them. What do I mean? Faith healing is very simple. I believe God wants to heal. I believe that it's paid for on Calvary. I believe that with his stripes we are healed. I believe all that. But I also believe that God is sovereign. God does what he wants to. And so while he can heal, he doesn't always. And it's like the three Hebrew boys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? They're standing before the king. They're going to get thrown into the fire. And all they got to do is this one act. Bow down right quick. It'll be over. You're in a crowd of people. Ain't nobody going to see you. But interior integrity says, I can't do that, right? And they say so that is one of the most profound things I've ever read in scripture. They said, my God is able to save us from this fiery furnace. But if not, and I think what we've done is hang our hats on things, and when it doesn't work, we're done with religion. We're done with God. We're done with Christ. Because he didn't act the way I expected him to. He didn't act like the bill of goods I've been sold. He didn't act like a divine Santa Claus giving out presents without anything else required. And because of that, I don't want him. I'm rejecting the very source of life, the very source of health, the very source of hope that I get. When we do deal with faith healers, the attitude which we approach them is appropriate, is important. Lest we become more damaged by them than we are blessed by them.
Yeah, and I really do. Once again, you talked about the meditation and the spiritual and how it all is wellness, and you kind of hit on the next kind of topic for discussion, but we're going to really focus and hone it in, which is where I want to talk about next, the ancestral wisdom and spiritual connection. And specifically, Dr. Bryant, I want you to talk about exploring the role of prayer, meditation, how African spirituality, family traditions, and cultural identity shape inner peace.
So, yeah, when we talk about ancestors, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get this very Wakandan picture of the folks going on us in the tree. You remember that scene in Black Panther?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We all do. Very powerful scene. And we get this idea that speaking to our ancestors is somehow necromancy. It's witchcraft. Or we'll get the idea that Mulan in that temple with the ancestors is somehow practicing some foreign religion, right? But it has been my experience that all number of religions have some sort of idea of an ancestor. And that ancestral connection is important. What do I mean? As a Christian, it is who went on before me, who and whose example can I follow. So we call those people saints. The Roman Catholic Church names them and canonizes them and puts up pictures of them. In Pentecostal circles, we do the same things with pastors that pastored the church before us. They got their picture in the lobby. So let's not act like these are two different things. But when we look at these ancestral people, Paul says to Timothy, I'm reminded of your faith, right, Timothy? We all know Timothy. Timothy is now bishop in Ephesus. Timothy receives things from Paul. Timothy is Paul says to Timothy specifically, I'm reminded of your faith, which didn't just come from you. This is your grandmama's faith, Lois's, and your mama's faith, Eunice's. And you got this from them. And now it's in you. And so that generational passing down of the tradition, of the faith, of the hope is so vital, and really it definitely shapes our inner peace. Even the Old Testament, he says, seek out the ancient paths, right? There's something about going back to see where we come from in order to figure out the trajectory of where we're going. And not only look back to see what we have proclivities and tendencies come from, but how we can reshape the trajectory of our families. Some things we got to break generationally because our great granddaddy was an alcoholic and daddy was an alcoholic and he beat mama. And all the men on this side of my family's been divorced and none of us have been to college. There are things that generationally we have to break, but there are things we ought to hold on to as well.
Yes, sir.
And so we got to have that cultural identity that comes from our ancestral legacy. Even I just got done listening to Reverend Dr. Ovidus Moss talk about the Hammond organ and how the Hammond organ sounds like a conversation between the preacher and the congregation. But the sound of the Hammond organ also comes from the transatlantic slave trade, where they would be humming in the bottom of the ship, so that when we hear the Hammond organ, we're not just hearing this interplay between the preacher and the musician and this dialogue that's going back and forth. But we are also hearing the hope of a generation of people who said, I made it over. We're hearing the hope of a generation of people who said that we survived something that was designed to kill us and we are still here. And so there is this ancestral connection along with this present day connection. And when those two things come together, it is powerful. And that's why that's even 76% of Black Americans saying that being Black is important to them. Why? Because their history is important to them, and their identity as a Black person is important to them. Now, I don't know why that's not 100%, and why it's only about 75. But what I will say is this: there is a growing movement to erase cultural distinction as somehow being offensive, and so especially majority cultures, they are trying to bastardize, cannibalize, and Columbusize our culture, make it a universal culture, and then say, there's no different. I wear my hat backwards too. I wear the baggy pants too. I'm like, that's a caricature. And all of us wear backwards hats and baggy pants. Yo, 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 you know what I'm saying? No, not all of us talk like that. It surprises you that I have a doctorate degree. Why? When it didn't surprise you that, Billy down the street did. My culture, my ancestral identity, and yes, my African traditions, my African indigenous traditions. Because this shouting and dancing we do in church didn't come from just the Pentecostal movement. It came from African indigenous religion. The ring shout around the fires in Africa became what we call shouting in church. And now we have a whole thing. And so our faith and our culture is brought forward to the present day. And if we can integrate a full sense of identity in that way, then we have that inner peace.
And I talk about we talk about politics on this platform a lot. And one of the things I talk about is that they are going back and utilizing some of the strategies and some of the things that was done in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and even the early 1960s to keep us, oppressed and to keep us, in Jim Crow and all those other things, right? And so what I say is that, like you said, when we talk about ancestral wisdom, sometimes we have to go back as well. Even if it's political, we have to go back and use those strategies that our ancestors used in order to, quote unquote, fight power with power, right? We cannot use modern day tactics to fight what they did, some 60, 70, 80 years ago to keep us in oppression, because we got out of it, obviously, I think we maybe, kind of celebrated a little too soon or whatever. But but those ancestors still got us out of it. And we need to, and I talk about it on the other Black Man Roundtable platforms, is that we have to go back to using those strategies. And I think that is just a spiritual or, ancestral wisdom connection that you spoke so eloquently about.
Absolutely. And just to tag on that just a little bit, the other thing, like you just mentioned, we pass down wisdom. We pass down coping strategies. We pass down prayers. We pass down spiritual soul. But ultimately we pass down purpose. We pass down identity. And when you have that sort of historical legacy as an anchor, I see I'm Pentecostal Orthodox, right? The Pentecostal movement started in 1906 at Azusa Street in California. But I'm Pentecostal Orthodox. What is that Orthodox part? It means that I'm going back to the earliest days of the church and recovering the great tradition so that I don't have a church that's I'm not a part of a church that's just 100 years old and forgets about its history. But that history is brought to bear on our current realities, along with my Pentecostalism, and that is why I am what I am. The same technique should be had in multiple places. I'm not saying y'all need to become Pentecostal Orthodox, although we welcome you over here. What I'm saying is, your family didn't just start with your great granddaddy out in Appalachia. Go back a little further. See where you come from. See what that culture practices and how, without realizing it, those practices are embedded in your very DNA and passed down generationally. Embrace your identity culturally, but also spiritually, but also psychologically, and realize that the person that you are is the greatest person that ever lived as far as you could go be. And when you realize that, you'll be all right.
We are the best versions of ourselves, and we are the best versions of our ancestors. The last topic I want to discuss, I want for you to discuss under our spiritual wellness topics, Dr. Bryant, I first want to say that the Black church evolves, it changes all the time, and it should. Just like language should evolve and change. And I think that we in the African American community, with whatever church we belong to, we are unique in that we have to evolve and change with, with the times. And so I want for you to, under the role of the Black church and our spiritual leaders, I definitely would like for you to talk about, before we leave spiritual wellness, the opportunities and challenges in addressing mental health within the faith communities.
All right. Now, I'm going to trot out my statistics first this time.
Okay.
Over 1/3 of Black Americans said they would recommend a friend seek help from a pastor for depression. And about 60% believe that prayer and faith are the best way to treat depression. So, what we see from that is it is trending that faith, especially the Black church, is seen as an answer to mental health problems. But I think, as I've alluded to and said earlier, that some of that's misplaced. You can't shout your way out of depression all the time. You can't, pray the depression away all the time. Does it work? Absolutely. Will God do it? Absolutely. Here, don't have people running from this podcast saying that Brian don't believe in faith. But Jesus says two things in the Gospel of John. The first time he says this sentence, he says, "Ask anything in my name, and I will do it for you." And there's the sovereignty of God who just fixes your problems, right? But then the next time he comes around to the same sentence, he says it differently. He says, "Ask anything in my name, I'll give it to you. You do it." And I think that one of the things we have been teaching and that we have been training people is this idea of divine Santa Claus, this idea of a God who wipes away all your debt and pays all your bills, and you don't have any responsibility. All you got to do is send up a quick one, and God will take care of the rest. And that over-reliance on miracle is improper. Miracles, by definition, extraordinary. When you try to make the extraordinary ordinary, it becomes common, and then it becomes disregarded, and then it ceases to exist. There are ordinary means of grace. There are ordinary means of God displaying his power to us. And we reject the ordinary because it's easier to say, "God, my light bill due, pay my light bill, send a check in the mail," and we receive the check and pay the light bill. It's harder to go on Indeed and put in 500 applications, get rejected for 499 of them. The one that you get accepted for ain't really what you want to do. It don't pay as much as you want, but that light bill gonna get paid. And so we have to have a grounded reality of faith that says, I believe God. He's the same God who does miracle signs and wonders. I believe in faith healing. I believe in laying hands on the sick and they shall recover. But I don't think that's God's answer for everybody. I've seen babies die in hospitals, less than 3 months old. I've presided over infant funerals with tiny caskets. Do I think that is you don't think we was all praying? But is that how God chose to answer? And so we've got to be realistic about what we can expect from God and how God answers us in a way that understands that his sovereignty and his providence are what they are. And yes, he's still good, even though the baby died. And he's still good, even though the cancer still ravaged their body. And he's still good, and all those things. And so we deal with that. And then once we have these realistic expectations around God, we can have conversations about what else has God given us as ordinary means of grace to address these mental health issues. Yes, we have prayer. And thank God for the folks who believe that prayer and faith are the best way to treat depression. I believe they are part of a multifaceted strategy that also includes therapy and sometimes medication. Because I don't believe God put the doctors on this earth and gave them the wisdom to come up with these combinations of herbs and spices and drugs and things of that nature and chemicals for us to be like, nope, I don't want you to save me that way. Give me the supernatural one. Because there's less stigma attached. Here we go back to the beginning. There's less stigma attached to a miraculous healing than it is the hard work of being healed. And both are divine healing. And so, as a black church, that's the challenge. We are still, although I think it's declined some systems, especially around the 60s, we are still a respected institution. We still representative of a majority of our people. We still, like the Target boycott, we still wield significant political and economic power. So I'm not saying, that we don't have a place. And I'm not, faith don't have a place. I'm not saying let's not pray. I'm not saying let's not, no, please pray. Because God will do it. Please fast. God will do it. No, you will receive breakthrough. God will answer you. But sometimes you got to be prepared for the answer to be take your insurance, call the in-network doctor, get an appointment, and let's work through it. The Bible, with this, as far as the black church, right? The Bible talks about how, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Miracles are mountaintops. There are these heightened experiences where we see God and they're glorious, but mountaintops are short. Mountaintops, by definition, are the peak, and the peak is the smallest part of the mountain. But in between mountains are long valleys.
Yes, sir.
And God is not most present with us on the mountaintop. Only a few people have ever gotten to the mountaintop and seen God. Moses didn't even get to see God. Moses saw the backside of God after his hand was covered. That is the most anybody's ever seen of God on a mountaintop. But he promises, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art with me. God is most not with us, not on our mountaintops, but in our valleys. And so we find him there, not necessarily to take us out of it, but to walk alongside us. And that's why Hebrews can say things like, we don't have a high priest that has not been touched by our infirmities. We can say things like, when confess your faults to one another and pray for one another. Watch this. That you may be healed. Why do I have to confess a fault to be healed? Because healing faults are not necessarily a spiritual issue, they're physical issues. They're mental health issues. They are physical wellness issues. They are, and we understand that these chemical imbalances and these other things, that these psychological issues that are weighing on me and that would weigh on anybody in our situations, really, are what they are. They're the physical manifestations of the mental manifestations of physical conditions. That I can be healed from that, and then my whole mind changes. That's why we must be transformed by the renewing of the mind. And so that is the opportunity for the black church and its challenge. We've got to break out of this prosperity, name it and claim it, blab it and grab it, call it and haul it theology, and get back to a ground reality where God still is a healer. God still is a miracle worker, but also that how he does so is not the same every time. And to recognize the other means by which God heals.
Yes, sir. I'm glad you reminded us that, the mountain top is the smallest part of the mountain, right? And so when we say, like you said, only few have been to the mountaintop. And I'm reminded, even when Dr. King says, I've been to the mountaintop, and he talked about how he's seen the promised land. What I want people to do is keep on listening or keep on reading what he says. And what they end up happening is they will end up right where you put us at, Dr. Bryant. And and the only thing I want to add to, this whole role of the Black church, how you talked about, prayer, and we still do need it, but we need other things, is I'm also reminded of one of my teachers, one of my favorite teachers in the world that we know as Fannie Lou Hamer, when she says, you can pray until you faint, but if you don't get up off your knees and do something, God ain't gonna just put it in your lap. So we need to remember those things. We need to remember what these people say. We need to remember what you have said tonight. And before we run out of time, Dr. Bryant, I want to talk about, I want for us to, we have this political leader right now today who says that, he is great with weaving things together and then, coming to some kind of, I don't know, some kind of, he weave it all together. And then at the end, we're supposed to see some kind of big thing that make us like go wow. I have yet to see that, but I want to attempt to do that with you tonight. We've talked about the mental health, the mental wellness topics. We've talked about our spiritual wellness topics, and what I want to do now is integrate those things. I want you to weave those things together. And I have two topics that I want for you to help, because it's important in our community. Let's be honest. It's important in our community to have that spiritual and along with that mental wellness. It is difficult for many of the people that look like me and you in this country to do just the mental alone. And so the first integrated kind of topic I want to talk about is this sacred, because this is the Black Man's Roundtable, just a reminder to everybody, is that sacred, and I think we've talked about it a little bit before, you and I, this sacred masculinity. And I want you to talk about this redefining manhood through emotional intelligence, faith, and community.
So, once again, I said it earlier, and I'm going to say it again. Jesus is the example. Jesus is the Renaissance man. He is the everyman. He is the definition of masculinity. If God showed up in human form, it is Jesus. And therefore, and if Jesus showed up as a man, he is the prototypical man. He is the man by which other men should be defined. And that's the first problem. Who are we defining ourselves over and against? Right? If we have sources other than the divine as the mold by which we define our manhood, we'll always come short of his manhood in a way that is detrimental to us. So I'm going to say that. So, what is biblical manhood defined by? Love, gentleness, community. It ain't about machismo. It's not about how tough you are and how emotionless you are and how basically, because that just makes you a robot. And the way AI is going now, you won't be able to distinguish the difference between some people and robots in a minute. Silicone skin on exoskeletons and conversations like the ones we having, all generated by algorithms, is on the way. But what makes me, as a man, and especially when you talk about sacred masculinity, a holistic man, is that I do everything in love. That I pursue righteousness, that I pursue godliness, that I pursue faith, but I also pursue love, and I pursue endurance, and I pursue gentleness, because when I pursue these things, I'm not suppressing my emotions. I'm not suppressing, the one of the one of the things that makes me who I am, right? We talk about the soul is composed of the mind, the will, and the emotions. Well, a third of me is my emotions, and then they'd be right about me if I get rid of these emotions. I am 2/3 of a person if I suppress myself emotionally. So I have to bring back my emotions. I have to be able to be emotionally intelligent. I also have to have a sacred vision of masculinity that involves faith. So the perfected manhood, we see Jesus, and we see Jesus in a variety of situations. We see him flipping over tables. And sometimes you got to flip over a couple tables. But we only see him do it twice. Every other time, what is he doing? Slipping out of fights. Not breaking, not swinging in them. What is he doing? Feeding 5,000. caring for his community, imparting wisdom to the next generation. He's bold, but he's compassionate. He's weeping with the hurting, but standing firm in the truth. He is not afraid to call sanctimonious hypocrites a generation of vipers. But it also says if you say you fool to the wrong person, you're in danger of hellfire. There's this sacred balancing act because if we do not get this right, the outcomes are terrible. Black men have a significantly higher suicide rate, especially when we compare it to black women. In fact, the suicide death rate for black or African American males was over 4 times greater than that of black females as of 2021.
Yep.
We are dying holding this stuff in. Literally dying.
Yes, sir.
For young black males ages 15 to 24, suicide is the third leading cause of death because we hold this stuff in. And so this strong, silent type, we gotta break that because there's sacredness in community. He didn't say I'm coming back for a bunch of people. He said I'm coming back for one bride, one church, which means that it is not our individualism that he saves. He saves a community of people. Let me say that again for the folks in the back. He is not coming to save a wretch like me. He's saving us, and I'm part of that us.
That's right.
And when we get out of this Americanized individualistic culture and this Platonic dualism that separates the spiritual and the physical realms, and we reintegrate ourselves into the knowledge that we receive, not only from the Bible, which is African, but which we had the North African fathers, and we had places like Carthage and Alexandria and all of these things, places in Africa that we received this theology from in the early church. But also, we have to understand that our West African traditions taught us this stuff, right? And we can't throw babies out with bathwater either. And so, when we get our spirituality back, and we understand that sacred balance between tough but fair, that we can cry. We can be upset about something. We can be angry and not saying it, and not commit domestic violence. We can do these things. It is possible, but I think one of the obstacles we have to that also is we have no living examples of it, or very few.
Mm.
Who modeled that for me? We come from broken homes and broken families. Daddy is present and terrible. Daddy is not present at all, or very rarely, Daddy is present and wonderful. And now, as majority broken homes, broken families, now I've got this absence that I no longer know how to do. So now I'm trying to go out to the world and practice something that I've never seen done before. And I keep failing at it miserably. We've got to do what is necessary to bring back that sacred masculinity, that balance, that holistic masculinity that takes into account our mind, our will. What do we want out of life? What do we want to do? Why do we want to do that? I think why is one of the greatest questions we could ever ask ourselves.
Yes, sir.
And stop asking it about things that happen to us and ask it about why we do what we do. Why do I eat my breakfast at 8 o'clock in the morning? If I move it to 7:30, will I get more done in a day? Now I've asked why, and I've created a plan for improvement. That 30 minutes might be the difference maker. But if I never ask the question, if I never get to the point, I don't know. So that sacred masculinity is necessary. That emotional intelligence, that not denying a whole third of ourselves, but also our faith, because our connection to the divine. The Bible says the soul of man is the candle of the Lord. God illuminates us here. And as he illuminates us, our path is brighter and our purpose is clearer. And any man without a sense of purpose will wander aimlessly. And so we got to understand and discover our divine purpose and how that fits into our manhood. And when we get that sacred masculinity, that spirit-infused, community-enabled, faith-forward, and emotionally intelligent masculinity, then we become the people that God called us to be. Then we become the people that the world needs us to be.
Yes, sir. Once again, another great segue into my final topic under these integrated topics that I wanted for you to discuss these two. And here on the Black Man's Roundtable, the next generation is always paramount. It's always something that we like to end with, talking about the next generation, those who are coming after us. And And what I want to talk about under this last topic, when we talk about legacy and wellness, Dr. Bryant, I want you to talk about how mental and spiritual health impact what we leave behind for the next generation.
That's again, great question. The answer is everything. Not just the stuff, right? Because we live in one of the most traumatized generations of all time. We got all types of assault, all types of abuse, all types of things rampant everywhere. We've got political realities that we thought we would never see. We've got socioeconomic realities that we have to face relentless. All of this stuff is attacking us, right? And we have to deal with all of that and say, when am I going to leave my children in the middle of this if I can't hold on to myself? And now, because I am a preacher, I think of this biblically and secularly in this way. The Bible talks about the sins of the father being upon the children to the third and fourth generation. What that means to me, what that says to me is dysfunction, trauma, and maladaptive coping skills are transferable to generationally. What do you mean? I mean that your daddy couldn't handle life, so he drank. Maybe drinking ain't your thing, but you smoke. You high all the time. You walk around with a cloud of green around you like a halo because you don't know how to cope with reality. Because you were never taught to cope with reality because your daddy didn't know how to cope with reality. Our coping mechanisms are passed down generationally. Our trauma is passed down generationally. There are studies that say that we have cellular memory of past traumas from past generations. We carry in our bodies the legacies of slavery, of Jim Crow, of the antebellum South. We carry that. And so we are already at sort of a disadvantage when it comes to that. And then,
Epigenetics.
and then on top of that, right, we deal with the positive side because not everybody got it wrong. I'm not here to bash black people and say all we do is pass down trauma and problems. No, sometimes we pass down healthy good things, healthy coping skills, and healthy mechanisms for dealing with family issues. Sometimes our children are believed when they say that, Uncle Johnny molested me and all of these things, and that appropriate measures are taken instead of the cover ups that happen so often in our families. Sometimes, so the Bible says, the sins of the father are upon the children to the third and fourth generation. But he also says in Proverbs, he says, the righteous lead blameless lives, and blessed are their children after them. Because I don't walk in with the baggage that I don't even know is there and therefore do not know how to cast off. I don't waste that time. And so I can build something even better generationally. And so the importance of healing in this generation is evident, and as especially our black children, our black teens, already carrying heavy burdens of trauma, distress. Nearly 65% of African American youth have experienced at least one traumatic event. When we look at the rates among white and other youth, it's half of that. It's 30%. Less than half. We're disproportionately upset dealing with all of this. And so, as we disproportionately deal with all of this, it is vitally important that we pass on to our children what it's like to be resilient and relentless in our pursuit of just and equitable tomorrow. And being the change that we want to see in the world, and having a healthy coping skill so we don't mess up. I always tell people there's a scripture that says God has not given us the spirit of fear, but a power, love, and a sound mind. I tell them that it's power to get it done, love to do it with the right attitude, and a sound mind so we don't go crazy in the process. And if we can pass that down and hand down that and our faith and our love and our belief in community and our belief in cooking. Bring back the family table. We talk about people being invited to the barbecue. When the last time you had one? You talk about people being invited to the barbecue. You ain't barbecued in a while. Have a barbecue. Invite the neighborhood. Get to know the people who you see every day and don't have no idea who they are. And I promise you that as we grow community and we do that and we teach our children to grow community and to cope healthily and to lean on our faith in times of trouble and to hold on to the hope, that these are the things that will transform the next generation. but also to hold on to the memory of past generations. My wife's favorite hymn is called Come Thou Fount. One of the lines says, Here I raise my Ebenezer. The word Ebenezer literally means thus far the Lord has helped. And there is this wonderful passage that comes with it. The Israelites are crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land, and they raise up these stones called Ebenezer to remind them that this is how far we've gotten. We was in Egypt. We was slaves. We was mentally, physically, and emotionally in bondage. And look how far God has brought us. Stony the road we tried, glistening the chase around. How far has we been brought along the way? And that understanding of how far we've made it. We may not be where we want to be, but we're not where we used to be. And that progress gives us hope and a push to keep moving forward.
Dr. Bryant, I don't know when the last time you hosted a barbecue, but what I can say, brother, is that you did some cooking tonight. So I appreciate it, like always. Like I said, you are a mainstay to, this platform, and I really enjoyed it. You definitely help us, weave this thing of spirituality and mental wellness together. And of course, again, like I said, it is May. It is, Mental Health Awareness Month. But of course, this podcast is always available, months out of the year. You don't have to just listen to it in May. And of course, we always look forward to having Dr. Bryant on to, like I said, to bring that spiritual and to bring that mental wellness together for us. So with that, Dr. Bryant, we appreciate you. And before we let you get out of here, definitely, as always, let the listeners, let the followers of the Black Man's Roundtable know how they can follow you, reach you, get in contact with you, and all those great things.
Sure. drcbryant.com. I'm going to just make it simple. drcbryant.com. If you want to get a hold of me, if you need to reach me, drcbryant.com. Send me an email, shoot me a text. All that information is listed there. And we'll get back to you as early as we can because I do have a wife and kids. And I live, but I work. And I'm a pastor. I do all the things. So I'm not ignoring you. But please, drcbryant.com. All the information to reach me is there, and you can do that. Also, shout out to my wife and her new business, the Teacher Happy Place. Please go on Facebook, look it up, and hit that follow button, hit that like button, buy a few things, support the business because that's how we as a community grow when we keep black dollar circulating in the black community.
Yes, sir. We talk about that a lot here on the Black Man's Roundtable. So, and what was it again, Dr. Bryant?
The Teacher Happy Place.
Teacher Happy Place. And it can be found on Facebook, right?
Yes.
You said Facebook, I think?
Yes, if you type in the Teacher Happy Place, the logo, I believe, is an apple with beads on it that says the Teacher Happy Place.
Boom.
And
there you go.
There are, lesson plan, like, especially for teachers, lesson plans, creative curriculum, high scope, and all those things. Things for your classroom, for your children to do, all of that. But also things that spark joy for teachers, like pens with erasers that are in the shape of African American sisters with afros and hair and all types of things. You got to look through the catalog. It's a whole lot of
good stuff.
And
good stuff.
You gotta support. We gotta support the Teacher Happy Place. Go look it up. Go follow. Right now, she just launched. She's trying to get to 100 subscribers on Facebook so she can go live and start selling things via live. And so you can be a part of the solution. You can help a black entrepreneur tonight. The Teacher Happy Place is the place to do it.
Great. Again, thank you, Dr. Christopher Bryant. We look forward to having you on again. And we look forward to you guys. Look, we wouldn't be here without y'all. And we always appreciate our listening audience, and so again, Dr. Bryant, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Go out there, check out all the things that he talked about. And you can always catch the Black Man's Roundtable the third Thursday of the month. Also catch the Black Man's Roundtable with the Black Man's Roundup with Rodney and Rodney the second Thursday of the month, and the Black Man's Roundtable Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby the first Thursday of the month. All episodes drop at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until next time, we'll see you in them streets and them suites. Peace. Don't forget to check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have show ideas or want to be on the show? shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please follow us on Facebook.